Hi all, it's Thursday again, and today's date is February the 7th. This is the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Get ready for the hammers. All and welcome to another week of the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show, a show that you will be told what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And there's a lot of fun and games going on, as some of you have seen, and we'll be covering some of that and a whole lot more tonight. I don't expect there'll be time for Q&A, so we'll see how it goes. Lots of thinking is going to be the theme tonight. I'll cover that in a minute. If you want to listen live to the show, it's 7:30 Eastern Standard Time every Thursday night. And it's on Spreaker.com/user/8955881. You can also listen live on thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. Now, there's a lot of questions that are already contained in the must listen to sections on that website. If you are new to THI, if you listen to those podcasts in order, you'll understand an awful lot more. There's also grounding, centering, and more importantly, shielding documents on that website. Those have to be ramped up even further. It's getting rather hairy out there. You can also catch up we have the archives on thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org also. And you can also find all the shows that are posted a day or two later on the Tommy Williams YouTube channel, which is still open, unlike Lucid Dreamers. Apparently they're trying to shut that website down, or that YouTube down. So I don't like what's getting out. That's why the truth will set you free. It also sends people into shitting their pants mode, which we'll find out about later. We have the Facebook page, Truth, Honour and Integrity. Welcome all the clowns and agents to our page. We saw some of you this week. And we also have the Facebook social media alternative on MeWe.com, and that's Truth, Honour and Integrity also. We have the People's Club website link, that's the foundation, and I recently posted the financials for last year because, unlike many others, this group is transparent and will remain so, and that's thepeoplesclub.org. For those of you who wish to contribute to my Patreon, and those who already have, thank you very much. And that's on patreon.com/TommyW/memberships. The transcripts of the intel and also the op-ed pieces are posted there generally a week later of all the shows, so you can catch up through that also. We have an email for the show, and that is truth.honor.and.integrity@gmail.com. Right, let's get started. Hammer time. Couple of points that I need to, before we go into the news items. The theme for this week will be contradictions, actual thinking, not just the headline, deep ponderings, thought processes of yourself and those around you. Are you a leader or are you a follower? Are you I or are you we? Are you helping or are you hindering? Are you empowering or disempowering? The ability to think on what you say or what you write has to be taken up a notch for greater understanding and clarity going forward. As the stench of desperation, oh boy, there's some stench, floats quickly through the air, one must be aware of adding to it at these times. The shit has already hit the fan, and it's splattering everywhere. Now, most of the shit is coming out of the clown pants, I must add, but we must stay calm in the face of such whirling fans. Now, some people have complained recently that I've been a bit short with them or not contributing as much on the chat recently. But you have to understand the levels I and we are working at here. Some of the questions that have been asked have not been carefully thought out. I open up emails and there's questions, lifelong stories and personal issues, which is increasing more and more by the day. I go on the Facebook page and the questions start, and I go on the MeWe page in the chat and the questions start again. And you know, sometimes you just have to, and would like to, just wind down a bit. Most times I can deal with or address the volumes of requests, and there's sometimes that I can't. So if I go on the chat and 2 or 3 people are all asking the same question, one in particular on hybrids, which to me is not particularly relevant to fixing the now, then understand when my answers back will not always be what you want to hear. Sometimes I will pose questions back as the answer, which is asking the person to think more, and I'm asking you all to think a lot more. The clowns are trying to push us to a saturation point where we quit. We don't need the added work or demands increasing within our group also. I will not answer questions on plans, operational stuff or personal details that are frankly irrelevant at this point, like Kim's divorce settlement documents that was sent to me recently. I mean, what relevance is that? And it shows a complete lack of thinking, real thinking or understanding of what is going on currently. Kim and I need your support in the best ways you can, not extra demands for our time. So you see, even Mr. Patience has his tolerance levels. Right, let's get into some of the news. And in the news this week is a plethora of things that I warned of, reported on or revealed. It's staggering. It's all coming out now. Not a surprise. But a reminder of the 2 words that were forecast for this year: consolidation and validation. Right, let's get into it. Arizona Senator Martha McSally, whose fundraising practices have drawn scrutiny in the past, is now in a bit of trouble again, and appears to have accepted more than $270,000 in excessive campaign contributions during the recent midterm campaign, and this is all according to the Federal Election Commission. Now, federal candidates can collect $2,700 from a single donor during a primary election, followed by an additional $2,700 from the same person during the general election. But what the federal agency found and flagged dozens of contributions to McSally from more than 60 donors that appear to have exceeded those limits, including one who cut a $10,000 check during the general election alone. Now, this isn't the first time McSally has drawn attention for their fundraising and record keeping. An audit by the FEC was released last year that found the former Congresswoman's 2014 campaign accepted $319,000 in excessive contributions. What a waste of money that is. Billions spent on largely, well, more times than not anyway, fake elections. The Roman Catholic Church. This could be a sign of something that we put out in November, early December, where the Pope was taken to task the cover-ups of the pedophiles. And this may tie in, as in Texas last Thursday, they released the names of almost 300 priests who it said had been credibly accused of child sexual abuse over nearly 8 decades. Now, the action was the latest in a wave of disclosures by the church as it faces a series of federal and state investigations into its handling, or lack of sexual misconduct. Now, the names were posted online by all 15 of the state's dioceses and followed the publication in August of a bombshell report on clerical sex abuse by the Pennsylvania Attorney General that has spurred investigations of the church in more than a dozen other states. There are an estimated 8.5 million Catholics in Texas alone, making it one of the most heavily Catholic states in the country, and the church has been in a state of crisis since dozens of local and federal agents raided the offices of the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston, back in November as part of an investigation into sexual abuse cases. Now, since the release of the Pennsylvania report, which detailed 7 decades of alleged abuse there by over 300 priests, dozens of dioceses and religious provinces across the country have published the names of their alleged abusers also. And more than a dozen states have also now opened investigations into the church, although Texas, it seems, is not one of them. Customs officers this week, stationed at the commercial border crossing in Nogales, made the largest fentanyl seizure ever recorded at port of entry into the United States, and this was the day after President Donald Trump signed a bill putting an end to the longest government shutdown in history. And yet no one's noticed it's back. No one noticed it was gone, and no one knows it's back. Maybe there's something telling in that. Anyway, according to the US Customs and Border Protection, an officer alerted other officers to the presence of 254 pounds of fentanyl, which was hidden inside an 18-wheeler truck carrying cucumbers. Oh, cats love them, don't they? During a secondary inspection at the Mariposa port of entry just past noon on Saturday, and it has been sent for chemical analysis, and they won't know the purity of it until a much later date. Now, he noted just how deadly that amount can be in very small doses. This synthetic opioid is 80 to 100 times more potent than morphine. This is according to the DEA. And in addition to the fentanyl, officers seized 395 pounds of meth that was also hidden inside the compartment of the 18-wheel trailer. That's why we need walls. I had to laugh when I saw this story, because people now have been banging on about it long enough, and people saying I don't understand it, which I don't. I have sanity. But a Canadian crypto exchange, Quadriga CX, and that moment of truth apparently arrived earlier this month when its CEO, Jerry Cotton, died suddenly from complications related, according to them anyway, of Crohn's disease. This is another smash and grab raid by the elites. Pure and simple. And according to a statement from the company, he died while travelling in India, where he was opening an orphanage to provide a home and safe refuge for children in need. Yeah, right. And since his death, 115,000 customers of the crypto exchange have been struggling with Mt. Gox-style liquidity issues, as those trying to withdraw their funds have suddenly found it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to do so successfully. Now, on Thursday, Quadriga's board released a statement announcing that it would be filing for bankruptcy protection now. On a statement, the company said the filing was prompted by an inability to locate and secure our very significant cryptocurrency reserves held in cold wallets. You're telling me that 115,000 customers held cryptos in these wallets online, Fresh Air tokens, and only one man had the codes, and if that one man goes, no one can access them. Oh my. So now they're filing for bankruptcy. Sound familiar? Should be. So the court is now being, it's going to go to the Nova Scotia Supreme Court to allow the opportunity to address the significant financial issues that have affected our ability to serve customers or give them the money back. And the court has been asked at a preliminary hearing on Tuesday, February the 5th, and I haven't got an update on that, to appoint a monitor, Ernst and Young. Oh my, like the all above board Ernst and Young, as an independent third party to oversee the proceedings. And for the past weeks, they have worked extensively to address their so-called liquidity issues, which include attempting to locate and secure our very significant cryptocurrencies reserves, and that are required to satisfy customer cryptocurrency balances on deposit, as well as sourcing a financial institution to accept the bank drafts that are being transferred to us. And according to Quadriga, these efforts have not been successful. Go figure. Now, the implication of all this is a report by Tyler Durden of Zero Hedge. He writes a lot of good articles. The implication is that Cotton, who allegedly was sick with a chronic illness, was the only person who had the key to the Fresh Air tokens. Really. And he apparently now has taken this information to his grave. No chance whatsoever. It's another heist. Now, according to an article in Coindex, Quadriga CX owes its clients a total of $190 million. $190 million. And the exchange holds roughly 26,500 bitcoins, 11,000 bitcoin cash, 11 further bitcoin cash SV, 35,000 bitcoin gold, and nearly 200,000 Litecoins and about 430,000 Ether coins. Yeah, Ether, Fresh Air. Dear me. It is unclear what percentage of these holdings was kept in hot wallets as compared to cold wallets, whatever that means. It just gets more lunacy by the day. But adding another layer of intrigue, Cotton's widow reportedly told a Canadian judge that her deceased husband held sole responsibility for handling the funds and the coins, and the remaining team members have had no luck accessing the exchange's coins. It boggles the mind, does it not? How long has this show been warning about this type of event, where you have no ability to control it? It's on a computer in the middle of nowhere that you can't access, and only one person has the codes, who then suddenly dies whilst they're in the midst of bankruptcy proceedings. Who's going to get your funds back? This is all well. This is why I keep telling people about cryptocurrencies, bitcoins, blockchain, and all the other stuff. It's the all-well world, where all your wealth is stored on a computer, and if they decide they don't like you, they press delete. Or if they decide that they need funds to keep their failing system going, They just press delete on the owner and collect the whole lot. It's beyond stupid. Another thing we warned about: the decision by a prominent consumer DNA testing company to share data with federal law enforcement means investigators now have access to genetic information linked to hundreds of millions of people. Family Tree DNA, an early pioneer of the rapidly growing market for consumer genetic testing, confirmed late on Thursday that it has granted the Federal Bureau of Investigation access to its vast trove of nearly 2 million genetic profiles. Now, concerns about unfettered access to genetic information gathered by the testing companies have now swelled since last April, when police used a genealogy website to ensnare a suspect in a decades-old case of the Golden State Killer. That's how they justify doing it. I can almost guarantee it had nothing to do, solving that case had nothing to do with pulling out DNA from these websites, and it's everything to do with controlling everything. With a load of genetic material, they can create an awful lot. But that site, GED Match, was open source, meaning police were able to upload crime scene DNA data to the site without permission. You think that was a coincidence? No, neither do I. And the latest arrangement marks the first time a commercial testing company has voluntarily given law enforcement access to its user data. Now it's just the first time that other people found out. We've been doing it right from the off, as I warned many years ago. And where all the DNA testing's going: Utah, Salt Lake, Dugway, Area 52. I wonder why. Further job losses in the media industry. Keep it going. We'll close them down eventually. And it's facing more hard news, with Vice Media now cutting 250 jobs, and McClatchy reportedly offering buyouts to 10% of workers at its 29 newspapers. And this is the latest round of layoffs in the media industry contracts, and the cuts affect about 10% of Vice's 2,500 staff, according to its spokeswoman Daniel Carrick. Follow on from last week and the intel: US oil refiners won't be allowed to complete shipments of Venezuelan crude they booked before the Trump administration slapped new sanctions on the Latin American nation. The US Treasury Department officials have informed some companies that previously contracted cargoes won't be exempt from a new rule blocking payments to Venezuela's PDVSA. And according to two people familiar with the matter, the requirement forces purchasers of Venezuelan crude to deposit payment into an account state-owned Petroleus de Venezuela SA, and they can't touch it. Another heist. And the clarification puts refiners in a difficult position, as PDVSA is now demanding upfront payments before releasing any tankers that are bound for the US. It's all there. But under the Trump administration's January 28th sanctions, which bizarrely someone messing with my phone sent it back to that date today and time. They love messing with time loops. If it's not 4 years, it's a week or 2 weeks. Yes, get ready, Dave. And US companies are barred from doing business now with PDVSA. 2 vessels contracted for Valero Energy Corp and one belonging to Chevron are now anchored in Venezuela awaiting payment. A 4th tanker booked by Chevron may be rerouted without getting the oil it came for, according to tanker tracking data. Disturbing report out of the UK, and this plays into some of the feminism issues and some of the comparative nature that we have riddled throughout society that forces these kids to take drastic measures. But the UK teenage suicide rate has now almost doubled in the past 8 years, as ministers have vowed to crack down on the internet giants accused of fueling youngsters' distress. That's one reason they cite. And new figures show the rate among children between 15 and 19 has risen, despite falling for most other age groups. And the Provisional Office for National Statistics data for last year revealed that suicides are running at more than 5 per 100,000 amongst teenagers in England. Now this same figure in 2010 was 3 in 100,000, so it's near doubled. And it comes after the grieving father of 14-year-old Molly Russell accused Instagram of helping to kill her after the schoolgirl took her own life. Mr. Russell of Harrow, West London, said Molly had gone to bed in a good mood, but decided to kill herself after looking at troubled images that night on Instagram. Also, online, in a tactical bid to get even more info on people's online habits, Facebook has been quietly paying teens and young adults to install a program that allows the company to track all of their phone and web activity, according to a TechCrunch investigation earlier this week. And the report details how the tech giant recruited users ages 13 to 35 to install and run its Facebook Research app, a VPN designed to monitor all data passing through the user's phone, including private messages, text and images, internet searches and browsing, and in some cases continuously updated location information, according to a security expert this week. In exchange, the company, working through third-party administrators, they always do that, to block litigation, offered participants e-gift cards on the order of $20 a month, plus extra for referring other people. Notably, the research app seemed to be a repackaging of the Onovo Protect app, a different Facebook program that Apple actually banned last year for violating its rules on data collection by developers. They're spying on us. People who spy are in fear, pure and simple. Pelosi and her mouth-chewing ways. This is the kind of skullduggery that's going on. Right before the State of the Union, Pelosi did an email solicitation a few hours before the scheduled to welcome Trump to the House chamber this week, and she said she was seeking to raise $200,000 to make his second State of the Union completely backfire. How would $200,000 make Trump completely backfire and the State of the Union? What are you going to do? Hire an assassin? Well, she tried it not so long back, did she not? Several times. And the email sought donations for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, better known as the KKK, which aims to elect Democrats to the House. In the years since Trump last delivered a State of the Union address, we've seen his vision for the country firsthand. And he's threatened the integrity of the Russia investigation, separated families at our border, doubled down on his ineffective and expensive border wall, and attacked everyone who dares to disagree with him. And I'll be honest, that's just the tip of the iceberg, according to the old bag Pelosi. Which is why I have an ambitious plan, she said, of $200,000 in the door before his big speech to make his second State of the Union address completely backfire. Perhaps Secret Service should contact Pelosi and ask what she was going to do with the $200,000 that would make the State of the Union address backfire, instead of fake Russian collusion. I was waiting for this result because we reported last year about the Grammy Awards and the Emmy Awards and how viewing figures were drastically down, and also, of course, the Clinton News Network and MSNBC are also collapsing in on themselves because people are finally realising they talk bollocks, frankly. And so I waited for the figure of the 2019 Superb Owl, not Super Bowl, Superb Owl. That's all hail Moloch, which is the giant effigy in the Bohemian Grove that they all stand there naked and prance around, playing with each other's bottoms and chasing each other around the woods. That's what goes on. Ask Alex Jones. He was there. But the Superb Owl was watched by the fewest people in 11 years. And the CBS broadcast of Sunday's game between the Los Angeles Rams and the New England Patriots was watched by 98.2 million, which is a considerable drop down, and the lowest since 2008, when 97.5 million tuned in. Now, the ratings for the Superb Owl have now fallen for the fourth year running. It was 103.5 million last year, so it's dropped 4.3 million, down from 111.3 million in 17 and 111.9 million in 16, and 114.4 in 2015. So you're talking ballpark 16 million drop. 4 years, 4 million per year are now deciding we're not watching that rigged game. And good. You know, the biggest issue is not so much the game, it's what takes place at half time when they take the piss out of the people with their rituals and symbolism and all the other clowning around that goes on. But the cost of a 30 seconds advert during the big game broadcast actually went up this year. Why? Because they're losing revenue badly, that's why. And the Superb Owl ad spots are the most expensive on commercial TV by far. A 30-second slot on CBS costs $5.25 million. Imagine what you could do with $5.25 million instead of wasting it on drivel. So I'm glad to see their events of let's take the piss out of the public because they think we're all naive. Not no more, we're not. Hawaii went all Nazi this week, and they're saying they could raise the legal smoking age to 100, effectively banning cigarettes for the vast majority of people in the state. In a new bill proposed by the Democrat Richard Cragen, the smoking age would increase rapidly between 2020 and 2024. Now, it still has to pass through state legislature, and whether there'll be a potentially strong backlash from tobacco companies, there should be a backlash from people. You know, just because you don't like smoking or smokers doesn't mean to say they're not going to ban something that you like one day. This is what they do. You have to be very careful once you go down that path of controlling what others can do. It's not sovereign. And, people want to drink and people want to do drugs, fine by me. Just don't bring it near me. What people do in their private lives is nobody else's business. Now, e-cigarettes, which killed a Texas man this week, blew up. Chewing tobacco and cigars are not included in the bill. And Mr. Cragen, who was an emergency room physician before he was elected as state representative, called the cigarette the deadliest artifact in human history. The stupidest artifact in human history is a politician. What would he know? And anyway, in January 2017, Hawaii became the first US state to raise its smoking age to 21, which is a good move, I think. And in other US states, the legal age is usually 18 or 19, and a new bill, HB 1509, suggests that the smoking age should go up to 30 in 2020, 40 in 2021, 50 in 2022, and 60 in 2023, until finally in 2024 you would need to be 100 years of age to buy cigarettes. I think Hawaii's got far more important things to be focusing on than what people are smoking, to be quite honest. How about challenging the tobacco companies to reduce all the additives they put in cigarettes? You want to make it safe. Why don't they all just have natural tobacco? There I go again, talking common sense. I have to stop there. A wave of bankruptcies is sweeping the US farm belt as trade disputes add pain to the low commodity prices that have been grinding down American farmers for years, which is why they need to release the NASARA program, which is not for everyone on the internet, it's for farmers only, for those who are new. And throughout much of the Midwest, US farmers are filing for Chapter 12 bankruptcy protection at levels not seen for over a decade. And bankruptcies in 3 regions covering major farm states last year rose to the highest level in at least 10 years. Now, the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals, which includes Illinois, Indiana and Wisconsin, the land of the ice fishermen, has doubled the bankruptcies in 2018 compared to 2008. And in the 8th Court, which includes states from North Dakota to Arkansas, bankruptcies have swelled 96%. The 10th Circuit, which covers Kansas and other states, last year had a 59% more bankruptcies than a decade earlier. Nearly that. Russia says it's planning to develop new missile systems after both Russia and America suspended their involvement in an arms control pact. The Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces, INF treaty, banned both countries from using short and medium range missiles. But last week, Donald Trump announced the US would leave the pact, which has long accused the Russians of violating. Russia then did the same, and the moves has now raised concerns about a new arms race. Yeah, there'd have to be an arms race because nobody's got a leg to stand on. The INF was signed in 1987 during the fake Cold War to ease a crisis in which the US and Soviet missiles were placed within range of European capitals. This is more NATO fun and games, and Mr. Trump has been badly advised. You know, America and Russia did reduce the weapons, but NATO are increasing them. They're the problem. Putting missiles in Poland and Georgia and all those border former part of the Rus Empire, Russian states that have now been taken over by Nazis and all kinds of other clowns. They're posting missiles there pointing at Russia. So why shouldn't Russia defend itself? this is what's going on. NATO is the problem, a big problem. The Department of Justice has now said it's opening an investigation into its attorney's handling of a plea deal with Jeffrey Epstein. Yes, he of the island, who was accused of molesting more than 100 girls in Florida. And Senator Ben Sasse, a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, said on Wednesday that the Office of Professional Responsibility has now launched a probe, and according to a letter he received from the Department of Justice, OPR has now opened an investigation into allegations that the department's attorneys may have committed professional misconduct in the manner in which the Epstein matter was resolved. Remember the piece last week about where's the arrests? Here's another example of what you're dealing with. You arrest people, and they have people in the Departments of Justice, the FBI, CIA, NSA, who just pervert the course of justice. They have to be cleared out. Mr. Sasse pressed the DOJ following a bombshell Miami Herald report in November that said Epstein, who is a Palm Beach millionaire, was offered a plea deal which just sentenced him to 13 months in jail, even after he was accused of running a sex ring that trafficked teenage girls. 100 girls or more molested, and he gets 13 months. Oh, in the deal, Epstein, who was being linked to Mr. Trump and former President Clinton, the news media had to drop Trump in. There's very tenuous links to Trump, but very detailed links to the Clintons, I might add. With the plea deal, he only pled guilty to 2 prostitution charges, not molesting over 100 girls or running a sex trafficking teenage girls racket. And in response, he and any potential co-conspirators, aka the Clintons, were given immunity from further prosecution. Still want the 60,000 arrests to go ahead? Don't you think those 60,000 indictments will all walk free when that's how they operate? Beyond a joke. Let's have a music break, and then we're going to go into the intel. Very fitting. When the world gets in your face, tell them have a nice day. Go and play catch the train or something, you know, or run across the highway at peak time. Right, let's get into the intel portion. There's quite a bit, and it's going off everywhere, literally everywhere now. It's not just America, although most of the main battle is being played here because of certain aspects of levels of clowns on the financial system, and also because we have so many anti-globalists here that don't want to play their game. Now, following certain Chinese groups, not government, sending a volume of hit squad clowns this past week to attack Kim and the team. This was another event, plus several other fun and games that are emanating out of a country known as China, but not necessarily the Chinese government. Kim sent orders to China to fix all the issues and remove the clowns from here within 48 hours, or actions would be taken. Unlike previous threats, they ignored, and like previous warnings, the team delivered. So on Saturday, the Chinese money transfer system, CIPS, was taken down altogether. And also the transfer and data communication system, the satellite SATCOM, was also taken down. And it was then found out that SATCOM is linked to a similar US military satellite system which is run out of Florida. That went down also. And they had to roll out an old 1980s satellite communication system to get back up and running. And any further fun and games by those groups will be met with the same intent back and more in future. No more warnings, like we told you. Now, following that last exchange, we got on-the-ground reports that China has now started pulling people and investors, more importantly, out of America and also out of large parts of Africa. Again, this is not Chinese government investors. This is clowns. And President Xi has been made aware of the activities that have been taken part by elements of people operating under his country's banner, and he has been asked to step up efforts to shut down the Chinese deep state participants, like all of them. Next item. The Federal Reserve on Tuesday, due to failing in other attempts to stop Trump and the trust pushing forward, they got their hackers out again and created a firewall around the whole Treasury and preventing all transactions in and out of the Treasury. Perhaps there were certain funds there that were due to be transacted that day. Anyway, that issue was fixed, and so then they decided they would compromise the Treasury terminal and also the President's own financial terminal to block all transactions in and out. Now, work was underway on Wednesday to repair both terminals and was fixed by the team earlier this morning. Next item. Mr. Trump responded and is preparing legal papers and a lawsuit with full executive orders to block the Federal Reserve all access to the Treasury terminals and all access to the Treasury building also. And also any activities or interactions with any government organisation. I'll repeat that again. He's filed legal papers and a lawsuit against the Federal Reserve with full executive orders to block the Federal Reserve from gaining access to the Treasury terminals or the Treasury building and all other government interactions. We will have further details on that when available, and essentially from a public perspective it closes down the Fed. Although I personally believe we need authorities should storm that building and close it down altogether now. Why? Because it's an enemy of the state. That is my personal opinion. Following up on last week's intel, the news that Wells Fargo contacting us for a meeting and work out deals. Predictably, they backed down on Friday. Why? Because the RV was paying out on Monday, and you all know what happened on Monday. It failed. Oh dear. Now you know why panic has really set in. So because the RV failed, on Monday, for the second time in 3 months, Mr. Mnuchin, or Munchkin, presented a gold certificate to Mr. Trump for funding leveraging again. a gold certificate that was found out to be fraud again. Committing fraud within the government post. Now Trump, we know, as we've reported it twice, has already fired this snake twice already, and almost came to blows with him last month. And yet he still lingers around like some bad curry meal. And it's also a further example of the conditions that Mr. Trump is working under currently. People get fired and they get pushed back into posts by deep state clowns. Next item. We got word of this morning, that Pelosi has now been fired already by the Black Dragon Group for failing to eliminate Mr. Trump and Mike Pence in a 9/11 style Capitol building plot in an attempt to take over the presidency herself by the end of January. Pelosi, you failed. Oops. Next item. Eric Prince and his band of assassins, Blackwater, Z Academy, you name it, are now starting up a new venture again, and again an attempt in China to create a Blackwater-style Muslim training camp in Jiangxing, like the ones he set up in Afghanistan and Iraq, under the banner of the Frontier Services Group, of which Mr. Prince is a director. Now, Prince predictably denies all knowledge of the deal, despite being one of the directors, and the training group is designed, allegedly, to tackle the Uyghurs Muslim group in northern China following a military crackdown on them. Well, that's the sleight of hand illusion. Now, Frontier Services Group have also got a license for airport services, VIP protection, take note of that, and cash escort in Cambodia. So you can expect some sort of uprising and skullduggery there next. So that was written on Wednesday. Today, following on from the previous story, which came in this morning, Eric Prince was told by the Chinese government he cannot build a Muslim terrorist training base in China and will not be afforded any land. He lied to the Chinese government, and the Chinese government has now pulled all support. Now, Mr. Prince is on the warpath, as he was caught by the Chinese and the Trust lying to Chinese officials over his and the Frontier Group intentions, and also on various other operations in order for the Chinese government to make certain decisions that were in favour of the Black Dragon Group. This is the big problem. That's the deep state. Same Black Dragon Group operate in North America and also China. Now, the China government was given full reports of all activities by the Trust, and they were able to confirm the information was true later today. These next three are all linked, and it's also linked to the Eric Prince as well. Take note. It is being reported that the Fed has printed pallets full of counterfeit USD, which is currently being held in Vietnam, Cambodia and Laos. There are many Blackwater operatives in these locations looking for a way to legitimize these counterfeit US dollars at the moment. Next item, which is linked. As no coincidence, but it's not, Trump was due to meet Kim Jong-un in the United States until early this week, when the meeting was moved to Vietnam. all a coincidence. Trump meeting in Vietnam, given the currencies issue, Eric Prince operation, both moving to Vietnam. This is all tied together. And it appears an effort, in my opinion, to take Trump out at the behest of the Black Dragon Group. Message to Mr. Trump: tell Kim Jong-un to come here for yours and his safety. Next item. It has been suggested by the Trust already to the White House they change the location of the meeting to some other country outside of Asia if America is not accepted by both parties. Now, we've heard rumours of threats coming from Blackwater, Eric Prince, to try to force Trump to sign off on these counterfeit US dollars and split profits with themselves and North Korea, as well as potential threats on his life if he doesn't comply. Now, Laos has also become a hotbed of cabal activities now that China is pulling out of there. Next item. Rumours at this point, we'll get more confirmation later, that are swirling all over the internet, mainly the dark web, that the United Nations is planning to be moved to Laos. I told you it was all connected, as promised by the Rothschilds. If Laos launder the counterfeit US dollars and become Blackwater's Asian headquarters. Message to Laos: it will never happen. Don't fall for it. The Rothschilds and the Dragon families have had plans to move the United Nations for a long time now to Norway if it's ever to leave the United States. So who is in control of Norway? NATO. Told you they'd come up again. NATO are the Rothschilds' own private army, which this country and several other countries have been funding. They're not there to protect the EU. They're there to escalate war on behalf of the Rothschilds and attack Russia, who have done nothing. Never did. For those of you who still have an issue with Russia, need to go and listen to my series From Russia with Love, and you'll find out the real history of Russia, which is a complete 180 to what we've been fed. A pile of bullshittery out of the portal people. Next item. You may see more issues with banks now. Wells, the Fargo, was down today for at least 5 hours, maybe longer, and can now report that the Bank of America is at the point of declaring bankruptcy. Oops. We did warn of it several times of issues with banking, particularly with the more prevalent known cabal banks. And if you think the FDIC will get you your money back, think again. They're bankrupt also. Millions in the red, the FDIC. I'm not warning again. A little explanation now of the former banking system as we knew it before the trust and the quantum system decided that they would change it all, which made it transparent, less backdoors, less cheating and siphoning and fakery. Now there were 7 levels of banking. There's still 7 levels, but the main levels were levels 3 and up. And level 3 was the main bank's level for interacting with the system. Level 4 is where all the Oracle systems operate from, the agencies and the military. Level 5 is the Pentagon and their interactions within the system. Level 6 is the Federal Reserve. Level 7 is the trust, and it always has been. Now, the interference ongoing via levels 4, 5 and 6 is beyond comprehension, and if it's fully outed of what was going on at those levels, no one would use a bank ever again. Trust me, you've no idea. Levels 5 and 6 was siphoning money out of the banks with impunity, and have done for a very long time. Every single credit card transaction, they were taking between a quarter and half a penny on each level of banking from Visa card and MasterCard. Ever wonder why credit card charges and transactions are so high? They are the reason. And this is where these levels 4, 5 and 6, many of the blocks of funds and the siphoning of funds took place. So Kim and the team, we've been working on this for quite a while now, on how to correct this. And recently we managed to change it, and was also recently confirmed by the latest agency puppet David Ray on his discredit blog of Kim, clown, another Tom Sims, another guy who sits in his mother's basement talking shite. So we cut the access flow of levels 4, 5 and 6 and shut them down altogether. And now levels 4, 5 and 6 are now all level 7, which is Kim. So the agencies who were siphoning money, the Pentagon, which was siphoning money, and the Federal Reserve, which was siphoning money, now have no access. And this is a source, not the only one, of the recent upturn in panic, as is another of their flows of funds that has now been cut off, and also a blocking mechanism that was being used against the trust. Oops. The final intel piece, before we go into a music break again, would not normally be in the intel, but given the seriousness of what's going on now, it is prudent for it to be in the intel. I gave a general warning of several alt media groups using agents and puppets within Facebook and also the MeWe group to do anything to discredit me, Kim and or the trust. And evidence of that warning has already came forth in a Facebook post by a current Kingdom of Manor and Rothschild's puppet named Jan Roscott. You see, Jan likes to play games. He asks me for proof. I provided said proof, but that proof doesn't fit the people who operate his vessel, you see. So Jan decides to post a news item suggesting I have been arrested for rape of children. But I'm still here. I'm not Jerry Epstein. Another clown, Bubba, sending people to the whistleblower site, which is David Ray, who is operated by a £350 man sad sack called David Ray, who lives in his mother's basement, who takes great delight in throwing out all kinds of fake allegations, even pulling up pieces that Neil Keenan and Drake threw at me near 3 years ago, which Neil Keenan withdrew from and gave a mild apology in the subsequent 3 months after his post, for people with long memories, that the Keenan team had made. But this matters not to these clowns. It's just throw as much mud against the wall and hope some sticks. But Mr. A's tactics, and I have all the emails he sent to me and largely to Kim, was designed to create another split between Kim and I. A common tactic recently, is it not? We saw a lot of it in the autumn. Well, it failed. And he was suggesting that Kim is a complete psychopath, and yet in the same email marvelled at how clever Kim is. Remember the opening piece tonight about thinking about what you're saying, right? Contradictory. So because Kim is a psycho, he is suggesting that I should take over Kim's role. Too funny. They don't know me too well, do they? They think my ego is so unbalanced enough that I'm going to replace Kim. Oh dear. Not worked out me out too well, have they? Just haven't. The problem they have is they can't get me on the 5 hooks. So now they're trying to massage my ego out of balance. Nice try, but it failed. But this is the levels these people are at now. And as I posted in the warning, clowns have pulled so many intelligence files on me, and even more so on Kim. They must have a National Archive levels by now. And all of it came up blank on mine and Kim's, apart from her former links with Jesper Ellerman, until she found out that he works directly for the Rothschilds. Hence they start to fabricate stuff. I'm involved in fraud, involved in stealing the People's Club funds, even rape of children I was accused of today. This is what they do. And I ask all members to be on alert for people friending you within the groups now that you are unfamiliar with. Their tactics, whilst not very professional, can sway some with their bullshittery. That is the sole purpose of this exercise: create a rift within the group. Why? Because this group sees and knows the bigger picture. Something their tiny minds are unable to see or comprehend, which has become more clear by the day. Truth, it seems, brings out the worst in people. The old line is, you can't handle the truth. It's far more prevalent than those who can. Truth is painful, but truth is our version of a planetary reset. Yes, I said that right. Truth is our version of a planetary reset, where we all stay and face it, rather than all dying and not. Embrace it and stand your ground. I guess if people had any doubts by now, or needed to know further whether we are winning or not in the truth war, the battle between light and dark, the battle between service to self and service to others, you are now beginning to see the proof of it. The air of desperation exudes out globally now. Clowns will always be clowns. It's what they do. Our truth has had a far deeper impact than most listeners have realised. Our truth will prevail us and lead to a progression of our species, whether they like it or not. Kim and I are the cabal's principal enemies 1 and 2 now. Our crime? Telling the truth. Oh my. And we will continue to do that with vigour despite their increasing attempts at taking us out. And for those that doubt that, try walking in our shoes for a day. I dare you. You have no idea, trust me. Only the truth and love can set you free. And Kim and I won't be backing down. Right, let's get into some of the op-ed pieces. There's quite a number tonight. Some of them will be heavy. Some may upset some people. Can't please all of the people all of the time. But the first thing I want to cover is the State of the Union, which brought much in the way of progression in the country on a range of topics, as relayed by Mr. Trump. But a few key things stood out. One, heads up towards Manor World Holding Trust, when he said 3/4 of the way through it of new investment is coming in, lots of it. Pelosi predictably twisted her face, which she did most of the show, but her look said it all. She started off all smug with the lizard style lips licking, which got worse as the show went on, and gave way to sullen faces and furrowed brow. Now, the many women's movements over the last 100 years to promote women into higher profile roles were given a hearty slap in the face by the women representing Democrats, all dressed in white. Predictably, old habits and traditions die hard, it seems, with the Democrats, as their direct links with the Ku Klux Klan was all there for people to see. They just forgot their hats. But those women not only badly misrepresented all women with their childish behaviour, but gave misogynistic men a stick to beat women with. Quite frankly, you are an utter disgrace to the female model. Now, politics is a serious business, or should be, but their antics were beyond a disgrace. Jumping up and down, celebrating more women in work and backslapping yourselves in a carefully choreographed scene was crass in the extreme. But it got worse, didn't it? Their stony silence on the maternity leave announcement, stony silence on a change of abortion rules and child trafficking solutions put forward has been noted by many. Quite frankly, you are the epitome of the brash, harsh, and I don't give an F about anything except me attitude brought forward by the feminist movement. Females equals mother and mothering, and yet you sat there in utter contempt about improvements being proffered for the well-being of the not yet born and the young children with a cold, heartless contempt. It's a slap in the face for all the people who voted for you. But the whole country, and worse, your fellow females globally, you all showed your dropped mask, and it's beyond ugly. Miss Cortez, fresh from opening her fat mouth on all channels and platforms in a desperate attempt to keep the old IRS system running. Yes, you may fool many, Miss Cortez, with your carefully choreographed words, but we ain't that stupid. You were reading an old guard script. She also sat there stony-faced during the speech on children and motherhood. You too, lady, are ugly outside, and more importantly, uglier inside. But the other thing that came up was our country's foreign policy directives and directions are still being skewed and relayed to Mr. Trump as it came out within his speech. His support for the hostile US military Inc.-led invasion in favour of Venezuela's presidential candidate, not actual president, Mr. Guaido, is a prime example. And I'm sorry, Mr. Trump, but you've been badly misled with that narrative, as we have warned. Now, Mr. Trump mentioned several times about American interests first, and how no one will be allowed to interfere in American interests again, which is fine. We all support that. So why the contradictory message of then interfering with other countries' rights to be able to deal with their own interests as well? To me, only when there is a dire humanitarian crisis should we go anywhere into another country, and only then after they have requested our help and it was approved by Congress. Not at the behest of rogue elements within our country on an oil deal heist on behalf of the criminal elites, which is why they're in Venezuela. Now, Trump's speech had many highlights until near the end for me, and the love fest of all things Israel made me, quite frankly, want to do my favourite MeWe gif of vomit. Highlighting Israeli people who die is fine. All lives lost should be noted. But the failure to address and balance the deaths of Palestinians, Lebanese or Syrians at the hands of these same people he is praising for their bravery is sickening to me. Babbling on about the Holocaust that allegedly took place 70 years ago, and yet ignores the real Holocaust perpetrated by the same people who not only killed their own in those camps, but massacred 70 to 90 million Russians between World War I and World War II. This shows a complete lack of knowledge within world leaders. Now, Mr. Trump, I will support him all the way if you're doing and saying the right thing. But if you're not, I'm not going to sit here and blindly follow. You've been badly misled of cozying up to these people, and it's a massive slap in the face of American veterans who survived the USS Liberty deliberate attack by the Israelis in 1967, where 170 were injured, but worse, 34 American heroes, as you called them, who died that day as well. Now, the question that still lingers to this day, are we just protecting American interests only, or is it Israel's interests as well? The jury remains out on that question for me. Next item, the Holocaust. Of course, it brings in much discourse and also much discord also, as despite failing numerous times to produce the actual evidence that 6 million Jews died in horrific circumstances during World War II, as several global researchers have discovered, one life lost is important, and I want to make that clear. It's about the numbers and in comparison to others. It bothers me when any person loses their life. But this goes beyond that narrative, because it sets the stage for what followed. But here is some of the figures that dwarf that at this point the alleged 6 million figure that's been proffered since World War II, despite the fact that same figure came up 146 times between 1889 and 1946. Germany lost 7 to 9 million of its people. China lost 20 million. With some estimates actually that China lost nearer to 50 million. Russia lost 24 million people during World War II. And even the small country known as the Dutch East Indies lost 3 to 4 million people. Poland lost 5.6 million, some of which were Polish Jews. The Philippines lost 1 million people. And even the small country of Romania lost 833,000, which is only 35,000 less than the total American and British people who died of 450,000 and 418,000 respectively. 25 million people were battle wounded in World War II, 15 million battle deaths, and a staggering 45 million civilian deaths. And yet all we hear about is one group of people's deaths 70 years later, who didn't even have a country back then until Britain stole the land of Palestinians and gave it to them. Not to be nice to the Jewish people or some fake biblical prophecy. Oh no. It was to establish a military base for a future hostile takeover of the Middle East lands and resources. And the sooner the world, including the Jewish people, wake up to that reality, the world will always be on the edge of hostility, and we will continue to be railroaded into not questioning the Holocaust or make rules denying the public from criticising anything related to Israel, which is what took place this week. There's an old saying, the truth never fears investigation. That saying has to apply to all, methinks. Next item. The woman who discovered $200 million missing from EU accounts. Every month, millions of pounds, British pounds, was being siphoned off into secret bank accounts or wasted by the EU, even though the EU superstate was formed way back in the 1970s, which is a complete and utter lie. The EU superstate was 1820. Congress of Vienna. It's where the original United States name came from. But the EU did not employ a proper accountant from the 1970s, which they said was when it formed, which is, like I said, a complete and utter lie. They just changed the script a bit. From the 1970s until 2002, no accountant. A bit like the Federal Reserve, really, isn't it? Same pattern. Once you recognise the pattern, it replicates everywhere else. Now, her name was Marta Andreasen, and in January 2002 she began her new job in Brussels as the chief accountant. And she and other whistleblowers discovered that millions of pounds of British taxpayers' money was being sent into secret bank accounts and actually disappearing. And what's more, when the EU Commissioner Neil Kinnock, who was Vice President of the EU, was told, the whistleblowers were smeared, suspended and then fired from their jobs. No surprise there. Now, the EU's budget is £360 million, which is roughly $475 million per day. What for? And the EU has destroyed trade by enforcing rigid, complicated and overly huge VAT taxes. This is the EU version of sales tax for Americans. Now, VAT has risen in Britain from 17.5% to now nearly 30%. Yeah, 30% sales tax in the UK. And most of that cash is siphoned into secret EU bank accounts, which are exposed as far back as 2001. But then in a complex cat and mouse game with Commissioner Neil Kinnock, whitewashed the mainstream press interest in the matter, and the BBC, no surprise there, never dared to mention these secret bank accounts, nor the EU's number-crunching watchdog Eurostat, which is at the centre of one of the scams which has seen millions go missing. Now, Marta Andreasen was hired as the EU's first proper chief accountant, and she was in charge of 130 staff, and surprisingly was the first properly qualified accountant to hold the post. And she did all her job correctly to the letter of the law, except these clowns don't apply to the law, do they, as we've all found out. And in no time at all, she identified that £170 million, which is around $220 million, was missing or unaccounted for in the EU budget. And the corrupt EU immediately slapped her with a disciplinary charge for defamation, and she was suspended from her job. Now, that's what happens when you expose a crime. She refused to ratify the European Commission accounts, and this means that the massive £143 billion per year budget was not accounted for in its entirety. £143 billion, $170 billion per year, and none of it was accounted for. She also found that many millions were missing or not properly recorded, and Andreasen went public with her concerns back in August of 2002 and subsequently caught massive public support, and the EU treated her unfairly. Instead of investigating the secret bank accounts of missing millions, they just fired her. And she was fully suspended from her job by the Commission in May of 2002 for violating Articles 12 and 21 of staff regulations, failure to show sufficient loyalty and respect to EU bosses. Unbelievable. But actually, she did show loyalty and respect, loyalty to the truth and respect for the taxpayer who had been fleeced and defrauded for decades by the EU. And the EU's secret bank accounts have never, even to this day, still been properly investigated. Some that were set up by employees of Eurostat, which laughably is meant to be the statistical watchdog of the EU. It's a bit like the Ernst & Young earlier, isn't it? Our own investigators investigate nothing. Eurostat allegedly used a double accounting system, that's the mirror system, which we've been talking about, that was installed in the Treasury, to transfer large amounts of money to secret bank accounts not monitored by the auditors. And between 4 and 5 million euros was thought to have been siphoned off, mostly between 1996 and 2001, an average of around $1 million per year disappearing without trace. And that is just one department at the EU. And subsequently, not a single person was fired from Eurostat. In fact, they carry on operating business as usual, knowing full well that EU politicians are immune to prosecution. Again, you understand the issues of arresting the higher profile clowns. They've wrapped themselves in legalese babble and are immune from prosecution in many cases. That has to be changed before you can drag these people in. Now, the incompetence of Eurostat is staggering, and in 2002 it produced a map of the EU which didn't even include the country of Wales, and the Eurostat scandal ran for years. Now, in 2001, a lady statistician stumbled on the multi-billion-dollar Eurostat scam, which again involves secret accounts in, go figure, Luxembourg. No surprise, Luxembourg, Belgium, both were regions of Holland. I've covered that country and its role many times now. Holland got broken up and parts of it merged into Luxembourg and parts of it merged into Belgium. This is why they changed the names around so people forget. Well, so they think anyway. A bit like Tartaria. Never existed, really. But Ms. Dorte Schmidt-Brown, a Dane who had worked at Eurostat since 1993, whistle blew that there were several suspicious contracts. Some have been awarded on the basis of nepotism, and payments have been made for work that was never even carried out. Sounds like FEMA. She pointed out to Neil Kinnock that more than £1 million worth of research work was given to Eurogram, a London-based company run by Edward Ojo, a former Commission employee. And the Welsh Mr. Kinnock is thought to have sniffed around the $1 million scandal, but he was allegedly scared off with the famous Eurostat map being published thereafter, which left Wales, who Mr. Kinnock is from, off the map. Ms. Brown was intimidated into taking sick leave and says she felt threatened and beleaguered, and hardly no official EU employee championed her expose of the Eurostat scandal, and none of the Smith-Brown allegations have ever been disproven. In fact, it's the tip of a giant fraud iceberg. She now lives on a €35,000 a year invalidity pension, which is 3 times what a disabled person gets. And she did, however, receive a public apology from Neil Kinnock from the Commission's handling of her complaint, and the statement from Kinnock proves that many millions have been defrauded by EU employees, and that the Eurostat scam may still be ongoing. No one knows for sure. We do, but it is. And it's wrapped into the being funneled money into NATO to supply more missiles to irritate Russia and escalate a fake Cold War. Some details was passed to me on Mr. Mueller, he of fake Russian collusion fame or infamy. Mr. Mueller, as you can tell by the name, his father was the head of the Gestapo. No surprise there, Langley too. And Mr. Mueller also oversaw the 9/11 investigations and was given the FBI director's job 7 days before 9/11. Recently, of course, Mr. Obama, when in office, extended his term for a further 2 years. Now, Comey was his apprentice, and Comey was the new deep state protector. Of course, Mr. Comey got fired by Trump, and Comey's deputy attorney general then appoints Mueller as the new protector of the deep state. See how it all clicks in. Mueller then starts leaking and lawyering up against Trump, and Mueller is building his own computer network to operate from. It's just like the banking system, hiding on black screens and blue screens and all of this. And apparently he's also creating an alternative infrastructure of power to circumvent Trump being in charge. Take note of that, Mr. Trump. As the person who sent me this said, Mueller must be our target. He is the operator. He is someone who's actually behind the curtain. He's not a politician. He's not in the spotlight unless he's spouting fake Russian news. And he is a major part of the deep state. who came in to help clean up what Comey was removed from operating. Except he didn't. Time to really focus attention on Mr. Mueller and his family history, methinks. Small word on something that came up in Facebook last week. Is it a coincidence? Maybe not. And some kind of took umbrage at my stance about flat earth. And I added my usual humour to it, which some didn't like. There's always something someone doesn't like, it seems, these days. But the key core of it is this. The key question is, what difference does it make if the earth is flat, round, ovoid, rectangle, or even penis-shaped? You know, what does it change? Does it solve the financial crisis? Does it stop 49,000 children dying every day? Organ harvesting, the homeless situation, the famines around the world, disease around the world? Does it prevent wars or violence or global suffering? No. So then it's a distraction piece, which I personally know was introduced into the alt media by Langley, CIA. It's what they do. And sadly, too many fall for the distraction of it. Like I said, it doesn't matter what shape it is. What matters is we fix this planet, no matter whether it's round or penis-shaped. It's a distraction piece rather than focus on what is real. Well, this group's not about distractions. There are a plethora of alt media sites that specialises in distractions that you can go and delve into. But this group will not be part of that, ever. The Earth's round, with a slight bulge. And really, I don't care whether I'm right or wrong on this subject, because it solves absolutely nothing. It's like the argument, we're all going to 4D or 5D. One would think we need to fix things in 3D before taking our distorted mindsets elsewhere, should we not? You know, this show will always call things as it is. Some will agree and some will disagree and some will project, because I've got them into a thinking pattern they were not yet comfortable with, which was a case in point in our discussion on the MeWe chat over the weekend. Next item. Thule, the island of Thule. Yes, that island. Now, Thule has more than 100 inhabitants that were forcibly relocated, and the people there were given days to leave after the Danish authorities, Greenland was ruled by the Danes until 1979, who had struck up a deal allowing America, deep state, to set up a top secret base on that island. Now, the US government established an anti-aircraft missile artillery unit, but no nuclear warheads were ever permitted, so they said anyway. And that site was strategically selected because of its location between Moscow and Washington, D.C. No surprise there. Another NATO-led operation. Now, the unexpected arrival of American soldiers is said to have caused the people of Thule great distress. These people were the Inuit community, as they had to scramble to find a new spot of land. They didn't even give them another place to go. And they spent around 7 months living in tents in frigid temperatures, with some succumbing to the bitter cold. It's absolutely disgusting. Now eventually the Inuit people found a spot that was 65 miles away with similar hunting opportunities, and they named the new settlement New Thule, or Quanach. But walking around the old Thule and the Inuits' abandoned village, the reporter stated, had a rather haunted feeling, and it was a mixture of renovated wooden homes now used by the airbase personnel for weekend breaks. Really? So they threw people who have lived there for hundreds, maybe thousands of years, so they can have missiles and weekend breaks. Unbelievable. But not a surprise. There are several contentious topics of debate that have been presented to us on a regular basis recently, of divide and conquer, via the alt media and also the portal people. Of course, we had the Black Lives Matter promoting the split between blacks and other colours, the transgender and the LBQT movement promoting gender divide and conquer, and we had the male-female agenda promoting a further split. Immigrants, illegal or not, is further dividing and conquering, and until people grasp you cannot be an immigrant, illegal or otherwise, on your own planet for source sake. Then we have the anti-Muslim, anti-Russians, anti-Chinese promoting divide and conquer fear programs, guns and no guns, wall or no wall, even Trump or no Trump. The list is endless to an observer, not so much if you mire yourself in the middle of it and you wonder why you struggle to make sense of it. Mired in the middle of it, you only see the trees. An overview observer sees the forest. So it was only a matter of time before the next divisive piece was rolled out, and in pops the band of divide and conquer experts masquerading under the illusion of being Democrats. Smoke and mirrors, folks. And the new one is abortion. Now, we in this group all know why the extension of the timing of abortions is being brought forward. Yes, it's to facilitate the various uses they have for fetuses and their dark ritual stuff that they are all embroiled in. But you have to remember, the cabal never put things forward for one purpose only. It's always 3 or 4 reasons. So let's leave the ritualistic aspect out of it, as that has been well covered in previous shows. They know this will generate reactions in the alternative media. It's designed that way. Why? To throw you off balance. Common theme tonight, is it not? Into anger-based irrational thinking processes, as too many of you are now working them and their game out. That's why they're doing it. It's the pure and simple answer. And next we will come to the ever-increasing non-logic of contradictory statements, because too many of us don't get a basic understanding of what we are saying, or writing for that matter. We don't critical think enough. This is a key problem that plagues many around the world. You don't ask the right questions. Narratives based on books in the last century, going back to 2,000 years ago, form a basis of not our thinking process, but their thinking program for us. A woman, not a man, or the government, or the law, carries a child round in her body for around 9 months. but many people think they have an opinion. Well, actually, it's not their opinion, it's the consensus of others, is it not? Steered by faceless people in think tank groups. That somehow they have the right and the opinion to pass judgments and decide whether that woman has the right or otherwise to decide her and her child's destiny, is the gist of it. Many complain over the Big Brother society we now have, and yet don't realise it. It is they who are the Big Brother. The system only creates the idea, but it is we who manifest and carry out that programme by not thinking enough. Who gave anyone the right to decide whether a mother is allowed to terminate her child or not? What next? The people decide who eats or not? Well, that's already happened, as not enough people care about the ones with no food. Or the people who railed against the Nestle CEO saying water is not a human right, and yet never think for 1 second of the day, week or month about the 40% of people who don't have access to clean water. You're beginning to see how and why now. And I say, most of the world's issues are not down to the cabal, but ourselves. They produce the game, but we play it. They produce 2 fake politician candidates, and we vote for them. Was Hillary or Trump your actual choices? No. Recognise the pattern and you will see the problems, and then work on the solutions. But a word of caution, you will not see the patterns mired inside of the narrative, like the trees and like the forest. Where do I stand on abortion in general? Not that my opinion is any more important than yours, except perhaps I think more deeper on things than most. In my opinion, it's solely the woman's choice what she does with her body. Taking that away plays into contradictory thinking many possess without realising it. And to support that statement, this last sentence brings it home. The one thing that is forgotten too easily in all of this comes down to one word that has resonated many times out of this group due to connections with the Manor World Holding Trust. Sovereignty. Many demanding our sovereignty, and yet where is the sovereignty for the mother with a child? Like I said at the top piece, contradictory statements, a lack of thinking. Think long and hard on this piece of what you're asking for or what you're portraying. It's always the mother's choice, or it should be. Asking the government or a man or the law to step in is not sovereignty. The mother and a child is a precious thing. We men are not privy to that bonding. A mother in this group lost her child today, a few years back. This next song is for her. Tear eyes, condolences to Madeline Brannan there. Right, next final portion of tonight's show. There's still some heavy pieces to come. Magic. I need to mention this again. Light and dark, perceived to be very different, but in reality it's not. Both can be devastating and both come with a price, a heavy price where humanity is concerned. And a line in the series I was watching last week, The Magicians. You know, the cabal like to throw bits in here and there of the truth and see, knowing most will miss it. But there's a line in it that says, magic was introduced to humanity by the gods to destroy them. Magic was introduced to humanity by the gods, and we all know who they are, to destroy them. A nice throwaway line in the middle of the script. Like I said, most would dismiss as inconsequential because it's only fiction. Right? Wrong. Magic is illusion, they say. So the gods gave us illusion to destroy ourselves. In fact, they gave us so much illusion and magic, we can no longer grasp on a planetary-wide level what is real and what is not anymore. And this is what's being corrected. Clever stage theatre abounds everywhere, and on many levels, does it not? Like politics, the classic old staged theatre puppet show of Punch and Judy, one portrayed as a baddie and one good. But if they're both operated by the same string puller, it matters not who is good or who is bad. And this is the classic magician trick, the sleight of hand, is it not? Now I know many will see magic as fun and a chance to balance out things to the dark magic. But what if it's not magic at all? And it's all just a sleight of hand parlour trick done by non-form entities that provide the illusion. You perform the magic when you never, and then it's you who pays the price for the magic. Is it worth it? No, it wasn't. All magic is external, and again it's another example of people externalising things when you really should be internalising things. Magic is external because it's not you who's performing it. The real magic, or the correct term, is the real abilities you have when your frequency has gone up sufficiently and your so-called junk DNA starts to be switched on. These are the latent abilities within us all. Magic is just lazy man's tech, like a cheat sheet on a video game. All the tech we ever needed is within us, provided you are prepared to work towards it and also be responsible with it as well, as you can just as easily lose that ability far quicker than you can gain it. There's something that came up this week and will hopefully cause deep pondering and thinking. A consensus on the MeWe chat is that people are getting tired of the sleepers, the unawakened. But what would your reactions be if all the sleepers vanished overnight? Like the 4400. Have you contemplated if potentially 85% or more suddenly vanish? How would you cope? Would you mourn for the missing and lose track of your own mission and purpose? Would you mourn but then become more energized and focused on your mission and purpose? What if you thought you were awake, but you still remain? How would that feel? Would you think you were cheated? Would you be envious of those gone? Will it be all consuming to you? Would you think in some way you have failed? Does that deflate you or inspire you to achieve a greater height? The 15% will miss the 85, but will the 85% notice? And would it not be the case that they will mourn more? Or will the 15% mourn more than the loss of the 85? For the ones who have already seen the videos of those disappearing in large numbers, and by videos I mean downloads, visions, how did that fact affect you personally? Will seeing the real event be easier for you now, having seen it, or worse? Something for people to really think about. Another ponder of the day to all who post about 5G. Must have answered that question about 15 times, which appears to me now to be the latest agency scripted distraction meme. Now, no one is saying it's great or it's not harmful, but the question remains is, where was the concern for 1G, 2G, 3G or 4G? Why is 5G garnering so much more attention than all the others combined? Question 2. Do the elites, core pirates, bankers, bloodline families or royals take anti-5G pills, wipe on anti-5G cream, or wear a non-5G Faraday cage or hat? Something to ponder on. Next piece. A video was posted this week, and it's another one of these ex-military or ex-agency people, and it was posted to the group, which referenced the Diebold Foundation, which is run out of Connecticut, which is suspicious in and of itself. Sandy Hook, anyone? But we are told by these ex-military or ex-agency guys that we have to believe what they are saying, because they were in the military or in the agencies, and this makes them more knowledgeable than we are. Based on what? Given the fact that all military are drugged up to the eyeballs and told to follow scripts and orders, how can we really believe a single word they say? What if their script given to them is complete bullshit? And we have to move away from the elevated status we give to military, agency people and politicians, that somehow they are more important than us, and worse, that they know more than us. Because I can assure you now, having listened to several of Kim's calls to higher profile people, they don't. If Donald Trump is 26 levels below Majestic, which is 15 levels below Kim, and no, there isn't anyone above her, it means he doesn't have the need to know. A 26 level gap of secrecy that the portal people tell you is denied to the leader of the free world. Just think about that. So the whole video was based on science and documents from 1958, which is overlooked by some people. Do you not think even some of our deliberately limiting and controlled science has not advanced in the last 61 years? Are they saying we haven't learnt nothing in 60 years and they will base this whole narrative just on those documents that came out of Langley? So these documents are released some classified status explaining pole flips, sloshing oceans, sun microbursts, and basically saying we're all going to die. This time it's now we're all going to die in 2046 through 2048. Great. But what happened to us all who were also all going to die in Y2K? Or what happened to where we were all going to die or transition in 2012? Or we're all going to die in 2017 from Zika virus? Should we not by now think their predictions are all bollocks? They all failed. So why should we all shit our pants because these clowns now think we're all going to die in 27 to 29 years' time? With their track record, why do we believe a single word they say? It's fear programming, and they've done it for years. But the question to ponder on is all dates are based on prophecies. But have you factored in the fact that the calendar has been meddled with several times, with estimates of 300 to 1,000 years being missing altogether? Or why are there still so many different calendars globally? So how can you give an accurate date with years missing? And the same applies to astrology. How can you accurately base your predictions on a 12 zodiac sign chart when there's one zodiac missing? Next question to ponder is, why do all these so-called classified documents only reveal pending doom, disaster scenarios and negative plots? Have you ever seen a positive classified document on where we're all going to thrive, grow, and the species is going to develop? No. Doesn't fit the programming agenda of fear and doom is why. The whole thing of videos of doom, biblical prophecy, declassified documents are all designed for one thing: fear and low vibration. It's a global program, and it's up to everyone to correct themselves and step out of it. Some people always feel they're not doing enough or need to do more on an external level, but the key words are external level, because in some ways they feel they can only have an effect if it's visible to others, and that is seeking external gratification, is it not? The real gratification and the real way to fix things are all internal. Why do people choose to significantly ignore that fact? And it's a case of where your energy goes. If it goes into fear, you're going to create fear. Next item, which will lead into the final piece of tonight's show, is part of an email that was sent to me And I'm going to say, I'm not going to mention the person's name, and the piece is not directly or indirectly targeting that person also. This is general. But one of the questions that was raised is, if Source is the creator, how could a mere reptilian alien, Anu, call himself Sovereign Lord, according to my statement that the Lord of the Bible is Anu, which is correct, and claim to be the creator? Because that's what took place here. People with advanced technology who came down and called themselves gods. There were people who came up who also did the same thing. They had technology that was way ahead of the current population when they arrived. Now, there was a documentary a while back about an island in the Pacific Ocean, and they've still got an American World War II plane that they built in honour of the gods who dropped food on the island for them back in the 1940s. They thought the American military were gods and built a plane. Still there. That's how Anu and his goons started. Doesn't take much. Are in any way the words of Jesus deceiving people? If Jesus is not the one sent to us, then why is it then that evil spirits are tied up and driven out in his name? If you choose to use that word, it works. You don't have to use that name. The issue is you are not consenting, not the name you are proffering forward. I do not consent is sufficient. Christ as the Son of God, we must follow his name. But didn't Jesus say, don't follow me, follow the words or the message? And the next point kind of disturbed me in many ways. If it were possible that I've been deceived to such a point, which is interesting, what place would Christians, the ones in the right frequency, which I know quite a few, have in the years to come within the foundation and the new system? I'm sure that nobody would force someone into leaving his or her faith in Christ behind if that is what made him or her out of darkness into light. So what would be the way with them? So essentially, this person is suggesting that the foundation or me will cut Christians out of the funding or a role in it. I find staggering. I've consistently spoke about the all, without conditions, in every single show. And this to me is indicative of the whole religious programming. It's all divide and conquer, us and them. If you're not part of us, you are against us. I'm not interested if you are Christian, gay, black, disabled, Jewish, or even a politician, or any other label you choose to box yourself in. I'm interested in the well-being of people, not labels. I'm asking this because I'm not willing nor ready to deny Jesus, to leave my faith, but on the other hand, I don't want to teach my children anything based on a lie. It's not a lie for me, of course, because it's based on my life experience, but I do my best to live by what I teach. That's why another reason tonight I mentioned the term contradictory. And looking at the words you are writing down and what you were saying. As the person who asked these questions are in a possible self-conflict of what you believe with this statement and the one previously, if it were possible that I've been deceived to such a point. It's contradictory. Now, I'm not here to change your mind. I'm here to empower people and give them the truth to the best of my knowledge. Except it comes up again, that contradictory thing again. I'm homeschooling my little ones. Good on you, is what I say. No indoctrination. And I want to teach them right, and my 2 teenage daughters grew up nurtured, loved and cared for. And they also share our faith. But we know and told them they need to go through their own experience of truly knowing Jesus. The words you used, they need to truly experience knowing Jesus. That surely has to be their own choice only, not yours. You're saying they need to. Is that not you deciding for them? Which is not a sovereign choice that they are making, but in essence a directive that you are imposing on them, is it not? And the final piece, but for me now, teaching them right equals God is love. No, love is love. God is another label. Many people exhibit love because they have chosen to give their love because of love, not necessarily because of God. Now I want to repeat, I don't wish to be or strive to pull this person apart who sent this in on this narrative, as it, like the abortion thing, it's rather emotive. But I have highlighted it because of the opening statement, is we are not thinking enough on the words we write or what we are actually saying. And I hope that helps some. Final piece tonight, which runs concurrent from the last piece, is I've noticed a lower energy and vibration within the group over the past few weeks, and some are clearly not operating in the 45-55 baseline. You wouldn't lower yourself that far where the energies go down, where it's noticeable. And these types of videos that I mentioned earlier always pop up at the same time. The videos that I referenced previously that we're all going to die essentially. Is it a coincidence? No. You lower your own vibration and you start to draw yourself to those type of shows. It's all about attraction. The higher vibration people will not be drawn towards them, and subsequently will not have them in their field, and subsequently will stay in their own vibration, not off balance. Now these types of shows are all pre-2014 news, in fact pre-2012. The internet was littered with these type of agency clowns spouting fear, and what's even worse, biblical prophecy. We're all told this is God's book, and yet no one asks why God can warn us we're all going to die in some giant disaster at regular intervals, and yet despite so-called advanced knowledge of this, God does jack shit to prevent it. Does anyone not question where that God is coming from. God's all-knowing and also powerful, and yet won't prevent mass genocide of his own creations. We need to start thinking. For years as a kid, when I was going to the match, I saw religious people carrying placards on their front and back with messages of doom, basically saying, if you don't go to church, you're all going to die. Repent or the Lord will strike you down. Jesus saves those who follow him. Really? There are 4.5 billion religious people on the planet. Why is the Lord, the Son of God, or God, not saving them from genocide then? Why is he not just destroying the atheists? This is a lack of clear, critical thinking. And then people make up all kinds of excuses. Well, the Lord works in mysterious ways and he has a plan. Sounds like Q. And that plan is make everyone suffer, die, be sacrificed, cruelty and torture, and then when you haven't had enough of that, he'll throw in a global catastrophe for good measure as well. And many people believe in that fake excuse. But why is the Lord not accountable? Further questions to ponder. Have you ever seen a talking snake? Have you ever seen a bush go on fire spontaneously and talk to you? Have you ever questioned why the God of creation throws out his first 2 children out of the house for eating a sodden apple? Think about that. Have you ever seen someone part an ocean and then close it back up when the bad guys arrive? Have you ever seen a fiery chariot come down on a mountain and hand you a book? Have you ever questioned who is the Father, who is the Son, and who is the Holy Ghost or Spirit? Or where and who is the Mother? Have you ever seen an Immaculate Conception? Well, have you? A lack of thinking. But the Bible teaches morals and righteousness, they say, in a book that includes genocide predictions, incest, bestiality, famines, pestilence, hierarchy, and smiting people. Follow this person or book, or you're all going to die. Or a church that's riddled in pedophilia and ritual sacrifice that goes to great lengths to cover that knowledge up. Is that based in morals or righteousness? Is the fact that around 3/4 of Catholics worldwide are living in poverty, whilst the Vatican Bank and its vaults were stuffed with riches beyond all reason? Is that based in morals or righteousness? Have you ever considered why the Lord or the Church would consider it a good practice for humans to be practicing cannibalism, which is done symbolically at every Mass? Eat the flesh and drink the blood of Christ. Really? Or the fact that the Talmudic Jews can kill, sexually molest girls from the age of 3 years and 1 day, and boys from the age of 9 years and 1 day, steal or maim non-followers with impunity. Is that based in morals or righteousness? Or the fact that most of Islam treats women as second citizens? Is that the word of Allah? And again, is that based on good morals or righteousness? All of the above points are to ponder on. But if you followed them through, or you told someone you had seen a talking snake, you would get locked up in jail or a lunatic asylum, would you not? Think about it. And I mean, really think about it. People get locked up for saying they hear voices in their heads, and yet don't for saying there's a white bearded man sitting on a cloud watching and judging everyone. Or a man from 2,000 years ago is coming back from the dead to save them. Is this level of insanity our species' baseline? The total seducement of words we have no critical thinking on. I'm asked to provide proof of this, that and the other. Yet where is the proof of the Lord, God, Jesus, Muhammad, Allah, the Virgin Mary? Well, it's in the book, Thomas. Well, I write a mini book each week, the transcript of this show, and yet some don't see that as being proof of what is being said. Why the disparity? What propagates that level of non-thinking? The world is riddled with dichotomies. The people are riddled with it, and it's all down to the dualities aspect. Religion is duality, because it doesn't allow you the triality aspect of it, which is you and your balanced assessment of it. Because when you really look at it and analyse it, what they are getting across to you, no sane-minded person would ever follow those dire practices, or put it in its correct context, programming. Is the Vatican and its Swiss army of protectors, no coincidence, Rothschilds again, saying that their protection is more important than the Catholic followers? Why didn't the Vatican send the Swiss army to defend the Catholics in France in the 1800s, or the Catholics in Ireland in the 1600s? Funny that, isn't it? In essence, you are allowing them to override your own soul development, growth and knowledge base. Like the internet data harvesting programs of Google and Microsoft, you are allowing them to stifle and hinder your own progress. You are allowing them to dictate your life and remove your sovereignty. You are allowing them to siphon your life force energy. You have allowed them to steal your souls. And no, that's not figuratively speaking either. That is fact. You're allowing them to set an external program where everything is outside of you, when your real gifts of truth and magic or abilities is all inside of you. Source is inside of you. You are the spark of the Creator. It's not external of you. The question is, are you a follower or are you a leader? And no, a leader is not just one person, one God, or one Neo. We all have the potential to be a leader, not in an egotistical way, but in charting a better path for our future, our children, our grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren. Is that not a duty more than an obligation? Some will complain, well, if it will take 40 years to fix it all, I will be dead, so what's the point? That is service to self thinking and indicative of the competitive dog-eat-dog world we see today. Me personally, I won't be around to see the finished product, but that hasn't stopped me from, in many ways, sacrificing over 2/3 of my life for a greater cause than just I. It's all about progression, and all must participate in every way they can to achieve that goal. The bigger picture here is not mass arrests, Trump, Kim or I, or trust funding. The bigger picture here is about protecting the survival of our own species, and then going on to progressing it. You have all had a life opportunity here, no matter how much strife or struggles you have absorbed. And isn't life the most precious thing of all? It's not pieces of paper with numbers on it, or Mercedes-Benz cars, or the latest fashion given to you by the branding companies known as the Council of 300. No. You're here to give the opportunity to the billions that follow our passion a chance of having a better life. Because if that's not the most important thing to embrace, you are clearly not as awake or as compassionate as you thought you were. It's non-human thinking. To the ones who are, embrace how far you've come and what you've achieved inwardly. The problem is no one gives recognition to inward achievements. It's all about fake degrees or college accreditations, badges for killing people, titles, land and resources for harvesting people, and pieces of paper for co-parenting life force energy. If you're living your life at the expense of others, you are vampiric in nature, a parasite. And the key is to get rid of people thinking a parasitic lifestyle is the way forward. It's not. And changing it to a goal of improvement for us all. The question for all the alt media puppets, the Black Dragon and Blackwater groups that are now threatening us, and the deep state clowns, it's not what you believe that counts. At the end of the day, it's how did you love. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.